Hello, hello! Now it's been a little while since I've made a video, so I might be a bit rusty. Exodus 24, we're getting to it now. We're getting to that Charlton Heston moment. You know, people who know the story based on the movie, this is where we're getting to the stuff. Now this part is left out, but we're getting to the calf, we're getting to the Ten Commandments and casting the tablets, all that good stuff that you remember from your childhood. Remember how long that movie was? They used to play it every Easter and we got to stay up and watch it, I remember. Alright, we've gone through the laws, or a lot of the early laws that have been given to the Israelites from God. Moses gave them to them. Now we're really going to get into affirming their faith. And remember, I've gone over how God's trying to make this seem very important to them. It's kind of like a coach or a parent or anybody when you're just talking to your players or you're just talking to your kids, and then when you really want them to understand something, you change your voice, you change your tone, you change your presentation so that they know that this is something serious. And God really wants the people to remember this, to know that this is something serious. He did it earlier when they had to cleanse themselves for 3 days before they went to the mountainside, because he wants them to know that and take this seriously. You know, it's not just a physical cleansing, it's getting your mind right to know that this is an important thing, so that you'll remember it, so that you'll look at it as, hold it in high esteem in the back of your mind, so you'll pass it down for the generations to come, so God doesn't have to show up every generation to make sure that they remember he exists or he cares for them. Alright. Verse 1, chapter 24, Exodus. Now he said to Moses, the Lord, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship from afar. And Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people go with him. Okay, now he wants the elders to come up and be, so that they feel a little bit more part of it. Again, this is all to show the esteem. You know, you'll see it all the time in like all these medieval type TV shows, that the king has to have a feel, an atmosphere about him to have the respect. And this is the mindset of human beings. God, of course, creating human beings, understands this, and he wants that mindset to be of supreme importance when it comes to him. So he's making it all this fanciful show and everything so that they know in their minds that this is something important. You know, if they were just allowed to walk up out of their beds and be like, hey, what's going on? Oh, all right, cool, we're going to see God. It's not ringing in their heads that this is important, it's something you take serious. Verse 3, so Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which the Lord has said we will do. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Then he sent young men of the children of Israel, who offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said we will do, and be obedient. And Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, this is the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you according to all these words. Again, it's ceremony to resonate in your mind of the importance of it. I'm not going to go over sacrifice again all the time. Just remember, it's to show that you trust in the Lord. You know, if you give up your oxen, which is a source of income, it's showing that you know that your real source comes from God and he'll provide for you. Verse 9, then Moses went up, also Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw that God of Israel, and there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone, and it was like the very heavens in its clarity. But on the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand. So they saw God, and they ate and drank. Okay, I'm going to go over to my commentaries here real quick and just look at a few things. So, The first one that resonates with me, and this is because I listen to a lot of those, like, I wouldn't call them conspiracy people, but the ones who do deep dives into scripture. And the sapphire stones, we get this reference quite a few other times. So first off, notice that they say under his feet. So right away we know that it's human form. That shows that there's a body, that something real is manifested. Now for me, obviously, I believe that this is Christ. And this is what most Christians believe as well, that whenever in the Old Testament Moses is going and meeting with God, and they saw God on these sapphire stones and all these things, that's Christ. He's coming to talk to them. It's God's word, the word made flesh. He's the one coming. That's why Christ says before Moses was, I am. Okay, but right here, in during word commentary, it mentions that the sapphire may suggest that the elders saw the sea of glass before the throne of God, referenced in Revelations 4:6. Also, Ezekiel 1:26 sees God as seated on a sapphire throne over a crystal firmament. This is verse 22. It says, and the thought is taken up again in the book of Revelations. So these sapphire stones are referenced a lot in God's kingdom. And a lot of that you can get into the biblical cosmology and all that stuff with the firmament and how it's referencing the sea above and all these sort of things. Who knows for sure? But I just find that interesting. You know, it's always about a sapphire stone. It also makes comment, and this is less interesting to me, but it's very metaphorical. A paved work of sapphire stone, this is to show that God has now changed their condition, their bricks made in the bondage, to sapphire. Fair enough. Says on the commentary of, but on the nobles of the children of Israel he did not lay his hand. This indicates that as glorious as this experience was, there was something missing or incomplete in the encounter. There was not a face-to-face encounter with God. These elders of Israel could see God, but there was no fellowship or communication between them and God. So they saw God, but they did not speak with God. You know, and I don't know how you want to else interpret that. Did they see the face of God? Is seeing the face of God speaking with God? What does all this mean? It's a little bit complicated, but just know that, again, it's leading up little by little, that God's revealing himself to these people over again after their time in bondage, where they've forgotten a lot of what they're supposed to be doing, as taught to them from Abraham and going down to Jacob and Joseph. So he's trying to get them back to it using Moses as his conduit, as his communicator. And it's a lot of it is because Moses is the one that he knows will be incorruptible, that he will not stray from the path. Even we'll see later on, Aaron kind of strays a little bit. Aaron isn't that strong. His sons aren't that strong. The elders, these are people God knows will become corrupted by the power that is given to them with the word. Now, Moses has his flaws. I'm sure he has his flaws, but his flaw is never to become power hungry. That's why God's giving him and only him this role in this time and place, because only God knows our hearts, and he knows the heart of Moses is one that will not stray from the path due to the power that he's been given. So when they ate and drank, and so right here says God wanted them to eat and drink in his presence because he wanted to communicate a sense of fellowship. So he wanted to communicate that there is a sense of fellowship. It's kind of like, you know, the king welcomes you and all your noblemen. They sit and they eat together, but then he has private words with the main nobleman that came to see him, not all of his retainers and everything. But to show respect, he has all the retainers seated and feeds them and sits in the meal with them. Again, and this isn't, you know, we copy God. That's why when I use kings as references, they're doing what they know a god or the God did or would do. So kings would do this because that's what they're trying to be. They're trying to be like a god. Whereas God is the God, so that's why he does it. It's not the other way around. All right, so moving on. There's a lot more I could go into that with the sapphire stones. That stuff's interesting to me. But anyway, then the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and be there, and I will give you tablets of stone and the law and commandments which I have written, that you may teach them. So Moses arose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up to the mountain of God, and he said to elders, Wait here for us until we come back. Indeed, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man has a difficulty, let him go to them." Then Moses went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. Now again, we have to look at the way that we talk here, and this is why I have the commentary, because I'm not totally learned on the subject. Because Moses goes alone, but does he go with Joshua? Does Joshua just help him? You know, obviously the Charlton Heston movie, Joshua, don't go by that. But let's just read the commentary here. "Come up to me on the mountain and be there." Moses went up to God's invitation, and he also brought with him his assistant Joshua. The same Joshua became the great leader. So Joshua accompanies Moses for a distance and then waits there for 6 days. And that's the way I always interpreted it. Like Moses is getting old, Joshua's young, he's healthy, and he's a deep believer, obviously a man of God, which we'll see throughout the rest of his life. So he helps Moses up. It's a mountain. I mean, it's not an easy climb for an old man like Moses. So he helps him most of the way and then waits back a ways while he goes up to actually be with God or Christ, or however you want to interpret it. But notice he leaves Aaron and Hur in charge. And again, like I said, Aaron, I don't know if Aaron is corruptible by power. It seems with Aaron, he's very much he gives in to pressure, you know, go with the flow. Like, he wants to be a people pleaser is what it seems with Aaron, is his main downfall and why he wouldn't be in Moses' shoes. Because we'll see with the golden calf, and we'll see later on with when they approach Moses about his wife and all this stuff, that he just wants to he's easily manipulated is the way to put it. Easily changes his flow with what people want. Verse 16, "Now the glory of the Lord rested on Moses on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The sight of the glory of the Lord was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the eyes of the children of Israel. So Moses went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Sound familiar? It's all comes together, you know? So we're going to see that Moses is going to have this conversation with Christ. Christ is going to tell him, or God, however you want to say it, is going to tell him how the Israelites are to live. He's going to give them the laws of how to create a community, how to worship God, how to live in God's rule for their betterment. You know, not only to show God's glory, but the way God shows his glory is by showing us how to take care of ourselves and to trust in him. He shows us how to live a better life, how to be happier, how to be more successful. But it's all about short-term pain for long-term gain for the most part. And that's why people always stray away from it. But that's what we're going to get into. But remember, right here, notice that to the Israelites on the mountain side, they see this cloud as flames on top. And again, they don't know and understand and comprehend, you know, not that any of us do comprehend God, but they don't really get it yet. They still are in that Egyptian mindset because they've been there for so long. We'll get to it, but think about how many of them see this and are like, Moses is dead. That's a fire. That's fire. Moses is clearly dead. You know, obviously the ones who have faith are going to be like, no, the pillar of fire led, and God wouldn't do that, and God is good. But there's going to be tons of them that will be like, no, Moses is dead. What are we going to do? God destroyed him. How shall we make amends? What are we supposed to do? And they'll start coming up with their own ideas. Golden calf, all that stuff. So that's Exodus 24. It's interesting to me for like the deep dives into, you know, like biblical cosmology and symbolism because of the sapphire stones and the way that God presents himself. So all that symbology stuff is fascinating. But as far as a historical study, or as far as a salvation study, or just a pure Bible study without looking into, you know, non-canonical and everything, it's pretty much a basic God's going up. The main thing that I wish people would take out of these, you know, sort of overlooked chapters of the Bible, like this one, you know, is that the wisdom of God is so great. He knows what it takes for us as human beings to get our minds right to fully comprehend and understand what he's about. You know, and we often, especially today, will try to put human characteristics or our own issues, we'll project them onto God. And, you can see it, people will say it's vain, or, he's very pretentious, or why is he so pompous about himself, as if God should be humble, and I just laugh at that because I don't see it that way. If anyone doesn't have to be humble, it's God, you know. And I'm that way in a lot of things. Humility is a great thing, but I love the '90s basketball and '80s when trash talking was big. Maybe that's just my personality, but I don't see that God needs to be humble. And the pompiety and the ceremony makes it so that people see it as a very important time, something that they need to get their mind right for, and they need to look at it with the right lens, so that they will remember it in the right way and its importance, and pass it on for the future generations to come. All right. Hopefully it wasn't too rusty, and I'll try and do these more often. But I'm reffing basketball games right now, so got a lot of late nights. Everyone have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or good night. God bless.